Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. I am your co host, Tim Hannon, and I am joined by another co host, and his name is.
Steve Word. All right. That was a nice lead in there, too.
Yeah, I kind of lobbed that one right to you, like a Pirates pitcher giving up a home run.
Like many of the prospects on this list, huh?
Yes, yes. So at the time we're recording this, Pirates pitcher Paul Skenes is quickly becoming a phenom. He started the All-Star game. It's very reminiscent, Steve, of like when Ben Roethlisberger or Sidney Crosby first started their careers, where everybody's thinking like, man, we might really have a generational talent here, and this guy could lead our team to glory, right?
Sorry. Did I laugh out loud? I don't know. It's hard to be optimistic with baseball because, like, I just see Paul Skenes in a Red Sox or Yankees or Dodgers uniform. Don't they only have him like 2 or 3 years or something? They don't even have him that long. So,
Yeah, yeah. So but right now, lots of excitement, and we'll actually talk about Skenes a little bit later too. But the kind of the basis for this episode is that every year, Baseball America names its top prospect for every major league team. Skenes was the Baseball America top Pirates prospect this year, and it got me thinking about, hmm, how many other guys have been designated as the top prospect and actually worked out well for the Pirates? So I went through the list of Baseball America number one prospects going back about 30 years. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about those guys and also to tell their stories because, I think we hear some of the names on this list that I'm about to drop and think, man, what a waste that guy was. But of course, these are human beings with real stories. So I wanted to delve into that a little bit too. And I decided, Steve, to categorize these players into groups rather than just like go chronologically through them. But first, just an overview of the list. So I went back 30 years to 1994. There's 21 names on that list because some guys were number one prospects for multiple years. And
wow.
just a little bit of a summary, only six of those 21 guys played for the team for more than 5 seasons. So not a ton of production out of this list, and we'll get into that. But to be fair, some of the guys on that 5 seasons or less list are in our first category of guys, which I'm going to call too soon to evaluate. And those are
Uh,
basically all the number one prospects since 2018. So that list includes Mitch Keller, who was their number one prospect for 3 straight seasons, Cabrian Hayes, O'Neill Cruz, Andy Rodriguez, and Paul Skeens. Definitely, some guys in that group who seem to be making their mark. I mean, Hayes, I think, has been a pretty good player. Keller and Cruz really seem to have a bright future, but I'm still going to say just a little too early. What do you think?
I think Keller's right on. Like, I saw him pitch a game this season already, and he was really good. He might
Yeah.
be their best pitcher right now. I know Skeens gets all the hype, but like just because he's pitched for a little longer, he knows how to pitch in the major leagues and not burn himself out in 5 innings. So right
Yeah.
now, Mitch Keller's the better pitcher, but I'm sure Skeens will figure it out and catch up to him.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So definitely some guys on that list who you're excited about, but like I said, I'm not gonna try to evaluate guys that have a few years in the majors, right? So let's go back a little bit more, and the next category of players I'm gonna call hits. So these are bona fide hits, the guys that did what you would have expected a number one prospect to do: come in, be a team leader, be a star. And sadly, only two of the 21 players fit that category. And I
Wow.
think I think I will get some pushback from the listeners and probably even my co-host on one of the two guys. So the first guy on that list is probably not too controversial. It's the 2007 and 2008 number one prospect, a guy named Andrew McCutchen. Kutch's resume speaks for itself: five-time All-Star, a Gold Glove winner, the National League MVP, Pirates have only had two guys win MVP in the last 40 years, and he's one of them. The other guy is Barry Bonds. Uh, Kutch was the star of those playoff teams of the mid 2010s. He worked out pretty well, Steve, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's still playing for the Pirates after a stint around the rest of the major leagues there. Yeah, not much you can say about Kutch. He's a pretty good player. How many home does he have? 300 home runs now? I think so.
I believe he just crossed that
Yeah.
mark this past season. Yeah.
I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but he's definitely a good player in one of the bright spots of the last 10, 15 years for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And a good person. And he seems to like Pittsburgh. I think he's going to be one of those ones that retires here. Like he really likes living in Pittsburgh for whatever reason. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
that's nice. It's always nice when a player actually likes the city. Sometimes you have a good player and they're not they're still a class act, but like Jerome Bettis, I think of that. Like, doesn't he live in like Atlanta or something? Like, not that, yeah, he's like a bad guy or anything. He just, he makes his home somewhere else. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think that he will be one of those guys in 20 years that they'll bring out to a game and everybody will stand up and cheer for, and they'll
he's going to be
retire.
like Franco. You're just going to see him all over town. You're going
Yeah,
to be like, oh, there's McCutch again. Yeah, yeah. He's the new Franco. Yeah, yeah, which would be cool. Yeah,
they'll put him in the team Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor or whatever that
yeah.
thing is that they have. So yeah, Kutch definitely a bona fide success. The other guy who I put into this category is the 1996 number one prospect. It's catcher Jason Kendall. Here's some numbers from Kendall. He played 9 seasons for the Pirates. He batted 307. He caught over 1,200 games. And I think he was really kind of the heart and soul of that era. And honestly, I think if he would have been on a championship team or even a team that was like contending for championships, I really think we would think of him the same way we think of guys like James Ferrier or Aaron Smith, not Hall of Famers, not well known league wide superstars, but guys who we thought, boy, that like we could not have done things that we did without that guy.
I mean, I think by your definition of the category, I mean, no, is he in the league of McCutcheon? No, not even close. But he's not a bust. I mean, he's a good player. He's like a solid major leaguer. He's like a role player, where McCutcheon you could build a team around and he was the star. I think Kendall's more of like a Neil Walker, like a role player. You know what I mean? Not I mean, and maybe, it was bad that he was now when you say number one baseball is that overall over the a whole major leagues or just in the Pirates system? I
Just
mean,
in the Pirates system.
so I mean, maybe he was the best player the Pirates had at that time, but that's what they say, damning by faint praise. And he wasn't a bad player. He wasn't like, oh my gosh, he was total garbage. No, he was a good player. He ended up having a bad attitude, but I think that was like he was a competitive guy and the team just stunk and like was so horrible for so long they kind of ruined him. So, I mean, I think when you work in that kind of environment, it just kind of gets to you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, again, he was their number one prospect. He made three all-star teams. He batted over 300 his time here. He was I, I think it worked out pretty well for him being a number one prospect, right? And you said about role player, that's why I mentioned guys like James Ferrier and Aaron Smith, right? No one no one in some other NFL city is going to be like, oh, Aaron Smith was one of the great players of the 2000s, but here in Pittsburgh, we know he was because he just did a lot of things that were kind of underrated, and we'll always remember him because he was on those Super Bowl teams. But Jason Kendall was on really bad teams, so I think that's why he probably doesn't get as much credit as
It's
he could.
Yeah, it's kind of like probably some of the Penguins or Steelers that weren't on like Levon Kirkland, very good player, but not remembered like James Ferrier,
Yeah, because
except
he
for
didn't win a Super
yeah,
Bowl. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Good.
So
Good comparison. Yep. All right. The next category of guys I'm going to call solid but not spectacular. And I have three guys on that list, and they were all teammates on that aforementioned 2010s playoff era team. So it's Neil Walker, the 2006 top prospect, Pedro Alvarez, the 2009 and 10 top prospect, and Gregory Polanco, the 2014 top prospect. So let's start with Walker. He's a Pittsburgh kid. He grows up going to Pirate games at Three River Stadium. So it's a really cool story that he ends up not only playing for the Buccos, but being their starting second baseman on one of the few good teams that the Pirates have had in his lifetime. Again, never a star, but certainly a solid contributor, I thought, on those winning teams, Steve.
Oh, he was good. He was a good player. There was a time there when when the Pirates started coming out of like being absolute garbage. What I remember, I went to a game and it was literally like a little league lineup. It was Walker and McCutcheon and like a bunch of other guys that like weren't that good. And it was like, well, let's just set it up like, in little league, like normally you have like two, maybe three kids that can hit. So you just put them all at the top of the lineup and everybody else walk, get these guys as many at bats as humanly possible. Because like I think the third guy on the team was like Garrett Jones or somebody like that. Like he was an okay hitter, but so it was. But I mean, they're very good players. I mean, I think Walker's. I don't. I guess this is an appropriate rating for Walker. I mean, I might rate him a little higher. And I would swap him and Kendall, quite honestly.
Okay.
And maybe that's just because the team had more success, but I
Yeah.
don't know. And I think Walker was better defensively than Kendall was as a catcher. So
Yeah, that's fine. This is a subjective ranking, so you are certainly welcome to disagree, as are you, the listener. So next is Pedro Alvarez, who it always seemed was so close to joining that stud category. He's one of only 8 Pirates ever to hit more than 30 home runs in a season, and he does it twice. He's named to an All-Star team. He's a really feared presence there for a while. Anytime he comes to the plate. But on the flip side, he strikes out a lot. He's kind of streaky, and my goodness, is he a terrible fielder? The National League did not adopt a designated hitter until after Pedro had retired. So I feel like he played Steve just like a few years too early because I think he would have been the perfect DH.
yeah, really. Well, if they should have stuck him at first base too, like or what? Well, he was at third for a while,
He
wasn't
was
he?
at third, yeah. But
Yeah.
then I think didn't they put him at first
I
eventually?
I think he was terrible over there too, or put him out in like well, you see, you can't put him in left field in PNC Park because that's like such a key position in that field, you know. It's like I really like this guy, and like you said, he was so like he would hit home runs and hit them with men on base, and it was like I just wish he wouldn't have struck out as much because he was just so close to having like a great career. And I really like this guy. And it just like towards the end, he just couldn't hit anymore at all. He just
Yeah.
struck out all the time and he didn't walk enough. Maybe if he would have walked a little more, they would have put up with the strikeouts. Like I always thought that Pedro Alvarez hit like 25 to 30 home runs, got like over 100 RBIs, and batted like 240. I'd live with it. I'd take that. Bat 240, 220, whatever, strike out a lot. But, if you're getting me 100 RBIs, that means you're hitting with men on base, and that's what they always needed. And that's what they can never afford was a guy like Pedro Alvarez.
Right. And his fielding was such a liability too. Do you remember the one playoff game where I can't remember if it was the year they played the Cubs or the year they played the Giants, but Hurdle literally started, I think it was Sean Rod, at whatever position, third or first that Pedro was playing until it was Pedro's turn to bat in the order. And then he swapped. I'm like, he literally was like, okay, as many innings as I can get with him not on the field is a good inning. So it was that kind of a thing where, like I said, you're right. If he would have been a designated hitter who drove in 100 runs every year, he could have had, he would have been the perfect. Yeah, he would have been a stud. So, like I said, very close, but not quite. And then finally, Gregory Polanco. I don't know. They never got a ton of production out of Polanco, but I don't think it's fair to call him a bust either. He does hit a decent amount of home runs, and he does drive in a decent amount of runs as well. And maybe it's the benefit of playing on those playoff teams. But Polanco was, was okay. Again, not a star, not a bust.
I think he's a little bit more towards the bust side, unfortunately. He was a guy that showed flashes. Like I remember I was at a game, he threw a guy out at first from right field. I mean, not that right field at PNC Park's that deep, but and that was impressive. And then he would hit home runs sometimes, and you're like, oh man, this guy's gonna be really good. And then he would like didn't they lose a game in Chicago because he literally like tripped over his own
Oh yeah, that's right. He fell down.
he
Yeah,
just like literally tripped over like his own 2 feet and the ball fell. And then it was like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
embarrassing. Like he's in Japan, I think. I don't know if he was in Japan. I know he went to Japan. He hurt his shoulder and that really ended his career.
Mm.
Like he was not that he was like, doing terribly well here, but once he got hurt, that was pretty much the end of Gregory El Cafe. Yeah.
So that's the solid but not spectacular group. Now for the guys who will just kindly say, it didn't work out so well.
I won't be so kind. They stink. They're bombs. No, no.
Let's start with 1994 number one prospect Midre Cummings. Cummings had come over in the John Smiley trade. He'd been a number one draft pick for Minnesota, and in 1992, the Twins are the defending World Series champions, so they want to win now. And they trade their top prospect Cummings to the Pirates to get Smiley, who is coming off of a 20-win season. So that seems like a good trade for the Pirates for the future, right? You're trading a 20-game winner for this stud in Minnesota who the Twins just are like, we know he's good, but we need somebody to win, to help us repeat as champions right now. And Cummings was a five-tool guy. He could hit. He was a good fielder. He could run. One scout said that he could outrun Vince Coleman. That's a little bit of a blast from the past but for those fans that might remember the 80s, Vince Coleman was a really fast base stealer for the Cardinals. So if you really think, at the time, maybe we have ourselves a future superstar here, but that never happens. Cummings is on the Pirates roster for parts of 5 seasons. He never plays in more than 60 games. He never hits above 255. So it doesn't work out. But like I said at the beginning, I don't want to have these guys just be failed footnotes in Pirates history. I want to give them some humanity too. Cummings today mentors kids in his native St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. So that's cool.
Hey, living in St. Croix, it's better than living in Pittsburgh. At least the weather-wise.
Yeah, that would
So
be
good,
nice.
good for him. He, as Chuck Noll would say, he found his life's work.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to 1995 number one prospect. And Steve, I'll be so impressed if you remember this guy because I do not at all. It's Trey Beeman.
Oh, I remember Willie Beeman from the movie Any Given Sunday.
Maybe they were related.
Maybe.
So, so unlike Cummings, Beeman isn't a first round pick or someone who people had on their radars to become a star, but he very quickly advances through the minors. And in 1995, he hits 334 for the Calgary Cannons of the AAA Pacific Coast League. That earns him Baseball America's top Pirate prospect designation and a call up from the Buccos in 1996. But Beeman only appears in 24 games, only has 11 hits, and then he gets traded to the Padres, and then he's out of baseball altogether 2 years later, out of the majors 2 years later. Uh, to his credit, he does continue to play baseball in minor and independent leagues until 2006. And once again is fairly successful in doing so. So Steve, maybe just a guy who was like good at a certain level, but just never, really ready, truly ready for the big leagues.
Who's that guy from Bull Durham? That kind of guy, like just a
Yeah,
career
yeah,
minor leaguer.
right.
Crash Davis.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
I wonder what it like. There is a guy that does have the home run record for the minor leagues, but I don't think it's this guy, Trey Beeman. But I mean, I wonder if he made a lot of money doing that. I mean, you don't make a lot of money in the minors, especially minor league baseball, right? It's like
No.
it's like you make as much working at McDonald's or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not.
in some of those independent leagues too, like he played in the minors and like the independent leagues, like the Washington Wild Things kind of
Yeah,
independent leagues.
yeah.
So Yeah, that's not you're certainly not going to make a great living doing that. But if you love doing it, I mean, if you think about it, he's young, right? He's probably loves baseball, and I don't know. I good for him, I guess.
I wonder if he's coaching, because that seems like the type of guy that would go into like managing or coaching or something. Like even if it's just like at a high school or like like a small college level.
Yeah, I tried to find that, but not surprisingly, there's not a whole lot of Trey Beeman retrospectives out there. So
Not even a social media post or wow,
yeah. So,
that's
but
crazy.
yeah, again, just a guy that was good at one level, not good at the other, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, the 1997 top prospect is a guy named Chris Benson. And he's not just the Pirates top prospect, he's the number one overall pick in the 1996 draft. And he's a guy that comes with a lot of hype. And sure enough, when he makes it to the majors in 1999, he actually has two really strong seasons.
We're calling him a bust, Chris Benson?
Well, let's go through this because
I'm kind of shocked. Like,
yeah, let's
yeah.
go through this. So in 1999, he finished his fourth in the Rookie of the Year voting, and then in his second season, he strikes out 184 batters. To this day, that's still in the top 20 for single season strikeouts in Pirates history. Benson also starts the final ever game at Three River Stadium. So after two seasons, it looks like he has a promising career ahead, but then injuries hit. He needs Tommy John surgery and misses the entire 2001 season. And then he really doesn't ever do much after that for the Pirates. He ends up in New York, which isn't really all that great for his career, but it's a boon for his wife, Anna,
Yeah.
who,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
in,
She was a favorite Howard Stern guest, wasn't she?
yeah, she
Yeah.
was. Yeah, she really like she becomes famous for like what being Anna Benson, I think.
Well, mainly for the same reason the Kardashians and everybody else just pose naked somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you figure that was the era of like Paris Hilton
Yeah.
and like like you said, the Kardashians. That was really when being famous for being famous was becoming a thing. So
Well, Tim, maybe you know the path of success for our
yeah,
podcast. You get after it there, buddy.
yeah, I'm sure that will do wonders for our listenership.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, Steve went on. She went on Howard Stern and she talks about how she and Chris want to have sex in every parking lot of every Major League Baseball stadium, and
Parking lot. Why not the men's room? Was the men's room too obvious? Men's room, the handicap stall, the men's room. They want more room, more room to spread out. It's ridiculous.
so yeah, I mean that was
Could you imagine her with like social media now? Like she
right.
would have been. Who was that one? Mahomes' wife. Like he was like always on there. Like everybody. I noticed she's toned it down. I think somebody, or I'm not on social media hardly at all. So maybe she's just still being wild. I'm just not noticing. But
Yeah,
I
social
don't know.
media would have been
Oh my gosh, she would have been. Ugh,
yeah,
that would have been annoying. Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't end well for Chris and Anna.
You mean they aren't still married to this day? Colored me shocked. I can't
Yeah.
believe it. They didn't those two. Well, if those two kids can't make it, what are the hope that the rest of us have, huh?
Yeah, yeah. It's surprisingly at one point Anna's arrested after she allegedly broke into Chris's home wearing a bulletproof vest and
What? What?
trapped him in a basement with a knife, taser, hatchet, and handgun, according to police.
What? I never heard that story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they get divorced
Wow.
in 2012, and today Chris is remarried to someone else.
That does not have tasers and bulletproof vests and
Hope,
knives.
hopefully not. But I
Wow.
want to go back to you said you didn't think Chris Benson was necessarily a bust. So elaborate.
He had two good seasons. I mean, I'll give you, Willie Beeman there and, you know, me Dre Cummings for sure. But no, I don't. He got two good seasons. He just Tommy John surgery hurt his arm, and that was the end of him. Pitching wise, and I think, that at least classifies him as a hit. He was good for 2 years, just not, maybe he didn't have longevity, but definitely. I mean, flash in the pan. You call him flash in the pan, sure, but I don't think he's a complete bust because he was really good those 2 years. And that's why the Mets took him. Well, that and the Mets are dumb, but I think that was back in the signing Bobby Bonilla for like 400
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
I'm thinking I'm the type of person that if I lived in New York, I would be a Mets fan because the Mets are the kind of organization that is incompetent enough to attract me for, I'm a Pitt fan, I'm a Pirates fan. I love incompetence. So I definitely couldn't be a Yankee. I would have to be a Mets fan.
yeah, yeah. You could also
Apparently.
root if you were there. You could also root for
Jets.
the
The Jet.
Jets. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
let me root for the two most incompetent franchises in their respective leagues.
So I'll give you that. I think that's a fair point. I think that remember he wasn't just the number one prospect; he was also the number one overall pick in the entire draft. So I
Yes,
think,
so I can see why you would say that then, yeah.
yeah, but if you take that aside and just kind of consider him a number one prospect, just like the rest of these guys, he's definitely had more success than some of the other guys we're going to talk about
Well,
here.
I
So
would say too, like Beeman, like was never. I think Beeman just got hot and was at a time when maybe the minor leagues weren't that well stocked, and yeah, because I mean, you look, it goes from Beeman like what it goes 3 or 4 years till '99 till they finally have Chris Benson, you know. So
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's true. Well, let's move on to the 1999 and 2000 number one prospect. It's Chad Hermanson. So he's another first round pick of the Pirates who almost immediately starts generating a ton of buzz for his performance in the minors. He's designated as the center fielder of the future for the Bucks.
but nice.
And what I remember most about Chad Hermanson, Steve, was that the fans were so irate that he wasn't being called up. And this was around the time that KDKA, which is our local CBS affiliate here in Pittsburgh, started doing these call-in shows that were hosted by Bob Pompiani. And that
Poor
was the top.
Bob. Yeah.
Well, that was the topic du jour for a while. Like, Bob, why aren't these jagoffs playing Chad Hermanson? And I think remember in the late '90s, you weren't super far removed from the glory years, and the Pirates had that little bit of taste of success with that freak show team that we did a whole episode about. So I think that there were still like we weren't as bogged down as fans at that point. Like there was still like some glimmer of hope, and they really saw Hermanson as like the next big star. So the Pirates finally placate their fan base by putting Hermanson on the big league club in late 1999. But unfortunately, he never becomes the guy everyone thought he would be. He bounces back and forth between the majors and minors for a few years. He gets out of baseball by 2004. Today, he still works in baseball as an instructor and a scout, and he and his wife have 4 kids. Uh, and he says today that he would be lying if he said he's not still haunted by what went wrong with his once promising career. And for what it's worth, Steve, Roy Smith, who was a scout with the Pirates back then, said he thinks what happened is that the Pirates rushed Hermanson to the majors too soon. So maybe
Blame
the
the
moral of the
fans.
story is, yeah, never listen to the fans.
I don't know. It's baseball draft is like such a like you think the football draft's a crapshoot. The baseball draft is an absolute crapshoot. Like it's like not like normally like the top 5 picks of any NFL draft, you'll at least have one that turns out to be a solid player. Not always a Hall of Famer, but good players. But like, man, sometimes like you look at the top 5, top 10 picks overall in these baseball drafts of all time. I bet there's like more busts, absolute guys that did not even make it to the majors than guys that did. I mean, I don't know why it's like that. And like, does baseball still have like 12 rounds or something? Like they have an insane amount of rounds too.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the international draft. Like why do international players have their own draft? That's like so stupid. Like they should all be lumped together and you just pick them. And if you got to negotiate with a team to transfer them, then I mean hockey doesn't have a separate draft. I mean,
Yeah,
I've never
I don't get why they structure it like that, but you're right. The baseball draft is a crapshoot, and you're right. There's probably a lot of top picks that you would have never heard of. And then even guys like, I think, going back a little further, Jeff King was a number one overall pick for the
He was a
Pirates. And
solid
he had
player.
a
Yeah.
solid career,
Yeah.
but like, so you have guys like that too that were like, okay, they were decent, but they were
Yeah.
never, number one draft
Like
pick level
like
superstars.
in football terms, that Jeff King would have been like a third, fourth, second day pick.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it doesn't seem like it happens like that, like say in the NFL or NBA. Like in the NFL, if you're the number one overall pick, you're not just kind of like, oh, he's pretty solid. It's like it feels like you're either a star or you like flamed out and you're not getting another contract because you had all that pedigree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, all right. The next guy on our list is 2001 and 2002 number one prospect, J.R. House. And what a strange path this guy had. Is another player who's a stud in the minors, and that earns him that number one prospect tag, like we said, 2 years in a row. But House has some bad luck too. He has some injuries. He also had to have Tommy John surgery in addition to several other surgeries. And he has some prolonged illnesses too. He actually misses a month of playing time due to having mono. And when he does finally make it to the Pirates in 2003, he gets a hit in his first major league at bat at Wrigley Field. But he's another guy who's called up and sent down multiple times, and then the Pirates eventually release him in 2004. So what does he do at that point? Does he try to catch on with another team's farm system? Does he, retire and get a job in coaching or something like that? No, Steve. J.R. House becomes a quarterback for West Virginia University. It's just the strangest career path ever. A guy who played for the Pirates in the major leagues becomes a college football quarterback after his time in the majors.
You can call it the Chris Winkie path. Although Chris Winkie, I don't think ever actually played in the majors, did
Right.
he?
I don't
Yeah.
think he did either. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
How old was he? Was he like 27, 28 years old when he
yeah,
finally?
something like that. He's
Yeah.
late 20s at that point. But I mean,
Yeah.
he was on the major league roster. He got a hit at Wrigley Field in his first at bat. And then 2 years later, he's,
Well,
throwing
that's weird
passes.
because remember college used to have that. Well, that was they got rid of that, or maybe it was the Olympics, where if you made like money, you couldn't play college football because you couldn't have your amateur status anymore or something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
I think you're thinking of the Olympics. I think college was
Yeah.
just eligibility.
Yeah.
Like that was the plot. Like I know a lot of people don't remember this movie, but it's one of my favorites. It was a movie called Necessary Roughness. Came out in like the '90s. Scott Bakula was the
Oh
star of it.
yeah. Like they had the whole team. Like the dean wanted to get rid of the team or something like
Right,
that.
right. But the
Yeah.
plot of that movie is Scott Bakula is like this, guy that was a really good high school quarterback. He never went to college. He's like 35 years old at this point, and they bring him in to be the college quarterback
Yeah.
because he still has his 4 years of eligibility because he never played college or
Right.
pro football. And so that's what J.R. House was. He never played uh, college football. He never played pro football. I think that's
Yeah.
what it is. As
Yeah.
long as you haven't played pro football, then you're still eligible. And of course, today with all the everything totally rapidly changing with the NCAA and the NIL and all that, who knows what the rules are now? But certainly back then that was the case.
Yeah. Now it's they. Well, the players are getting paid above the table instead of under the table.
Right,
So
right.
I guess there's something for honesty there at least. I mean, I don't know. It's the death of amateur sports. So there really isn't amateur sports anymore,
Nope,
which
too much
I don't
money to
know.
be made.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing or if I like it or not. I haven't
Yeah,
made up my mind on that. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, and it's getting bad where like they're signing kids in like 10th grade. Like that's weird.
yeah.
I'm not crazy. That's like European like soccer. It's like that. Like they'll have like kids come through like Arsenal will have like a club that's like for 11 10 and 11 year olds and it's really just like a minor league for their soccer team, which is weird.
Well, J.R. House was way removed from 10th grade.
Yeah.
He was having his high school reunion when he signed at West Virginia. So
10 year, it's like, hey, let me go back to that is just the oddest. Like, did he do well at I forget. I don't think he did that great at West Virginia, did he?
he was a backup. I think that was the Pat White era.
Okay,
So
so
he was a backup, but
he's also
yeah,
saw Pat White play some good games.
yeah, and he got into a few games.
I think Pat White was a
Well,
minor league baseball player too.
oh,
If I
was he?
remember.
Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
but yeah, I mean, so yeah, he was there during a good time, but he was not the starter. So, all right, the 2003 and 2004 number one prospects, another guy on our list of didn't work out so well. John Van Benschkoten, and this one's pretty infamous in Pirates lore because the story on Van Benschkoten
He was
was
a really high pick, wasn't he? Yeah.
well, yeah, and he was a college power hitter. He actually leads all of Division One in home runs. So the Pirates, in all their wisdom, convert him into a pitcher.
That's right. Yeah, I thought he was a pitcher.
Yeah, they don't
Why?
even they don't even tell him why. They literally just take his bat one day in spring training and tell him you don't you. They take his bat and they tell him you don't do that anymore. That's a true story.
No, they don't.
That's a true story.
They're like, give me that bat. Go
That's
on
what
the mound.
that's what he says. That they just took his bat, said that's not you don't do that anymore. You're a pitcher now.
Why? What would
He's horrible as a pitcher too. He goes 2-13 with a 9.20 ERA and 19 starts over 3 seasons. Among pitchers with at least 75 innings pitched, John Van Benskoten, wait for this, has the highest ERA of all time
uh
in the history of baseball.
I wonder what the thought process on that was.
I read one thing where they
Did he pitch in college? I mean,
I think that so I read one scout said that he thought his swing was too much like Michael Jordan. Remember Michael Jordan played baseball for a while? I
I've never heard anybody compare their swing to Michael
right,
Jordan. Yeah.
right. Again, Steve, it's the Pirates. I mean, that's really the answer. It's the Pirates.
Scouting's not their strong point.
Yeah,
Neither is managing. Neither is general managing.
yeah, yeah. Talent evaluation, talent development. You know, they're pretty good
They're
at
really good
selling.
at bobblehead night, though.
I was gonna say,
Fireworks.
or
Yeah.
you know,
That's where you invest the money.
yeah, food options at the stadium. That's really where they should stick to what they're good at. Today, Van Benskoten is the VP of a real estate investment firm in Tennessee. No word, Steve, on whether or not that was his original position. Like maybe he actually wanted to be the accounting director, but they converted him to VP instead.
Like you don't do that anymore. They took
Yeah.
like the spreadsheet off them. You don't do that anymore. But I really like the crunch numbers. I'm really good at it. I went to school for it.
No, you're in upper
No,
management now.
but I'm terrible at it.
Sit at this desk. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy, poor guy.
What? Somebody has to like go and actually do a story on that. That's like an article for a paper or a new like. Boy, we should like if I could track down John Benska, Ben whatever his name is in Tennessee. I'll take a road trip to Tennessee to talk to this guy, or we could just do it over Zoom. But
Yeah.
whatever.
That would be a good episode of like the mystery of why what possessed the Pirates to turn the leading home run hitter in all of NCAA Division One baseball into a horrible pitcher who has the highest ERA in the history of the Major League
Like
Baseball.
I could see like, well, he was really good in the NCAA, and then we brought him up, and like he really stunk for a couple of years, and then we tried him at pitcher. Like, is that the path? Is that what
Yeah.
happened? Or
So the next guy on our list was an actual pitcher, and I think there's going to be some debate on whether or not he belongs here in this bus category too. It's 2005 number one prospect Zach Duke.
ooh, yeah,
Yeah. I figured you would wince at that a little bit. So Duke's not a high draft pick, not a guy who had a lot of buzz, but he does start turning heads in the minors. And late in that same year, he's Baseball America's top Pirates prospect. The Bucks bring him up to Pittsburgh, and boy, does he go on a tear. He makes 14 starts and posts a 1.81 ERA. At one point, he has a 22 inning scoreless stretch. He gets a bunch of votes for Rookie of the Year. And honestly, I think he probably would have won that award had he played more of the season. It's just that he was only there. He only made 14 starts, right? And he only came towards the end of the season. So that's that's 2005. 2006, Zach Duke is named the opening day starter and, is now the full-fledged ace of the staff, but he badly regresses and never really again matches that 2005 start. He eventually finds some success as a bullpen guy, but that's long after his Pirates days. He actually pitches until 2019, so he's a pretty long career. But again, just not a guy that really ever became any kind of a long-term star for the Pirates.
I think you're being unfair to him. I don't. Like he's probably like a guy that like second time through the league people start to catch on to. Maybe that's what happened to Zach Duke. And I wouldn't call him a bust. I mean, is why are we calling him a bust? Because he was so highly rated by the baseball people.
Well, because he was a number one, so he was a number one prospect who just didn't really. I mean, what is it that he did that was
It's 22 scoreless innings,
yeah,
apparently.
that was one. I mean, that was half of
A little
one
flash
season.
in the pan. Like I think he's another flash in the pan,
Yeah,
even more of
yeah,
a flash in the pan than Chris Benson.
yeah. Like I said, that maybe you're right. I think you make a good point, Steve. That maybe Duke and Benson were a little bit more on the like flash in the pan, or maybe even that solid but not star.
Yeah.
You know, he did have an All-Star season a few years later in 2009, but he also lost 16 games that year. Just
Didn't
looking
he
at his
go?
stats.
He went somewhere else and pitched and had a decent. Like I remember he was decent. He wasn't like the ace of, but he
Yeah,
was
that's
like
like I
I
said. He
think
played. He played all the way till 2019.
I
So
think
he
he
played
was like
for
his level. What like I think maybe that hot start like raised expectations
yeah,
above where they should have
yeah,
been.
yeah,
Whereas where he is, he's like Bailey Falter, the guy who's on the Pirates now just got hurt. Like he's like a fourth or fifth starter bullpen guy, and
yeah,
that's what he
yeah.
is.
Sure. But for a number one prospect, I don't know. Feels like again, if you're a number one prospect, the idea would be you're a little bit better than that. But then we kind of gave Gregory Polanco a pass too, so
Yeah.
maybe Zach deserves that. So, all right, the last guy in this category is the 2011 number one prospect, Jamison Tyone. He's the number two overall pick in the draft, so like many other guys on this list, comes with a ton of hype. But man, Tyon has all kinds of health problems. He has two Tommy John surgeries and survives a bout with testicular cancer. So, first of all, like all the credit in the world that he fought through all that and eventually makes his way to the team in 2016. And remember, 2016, that was 5 years after he's the number one prospect. And he does have some success with the Buccos. That 2018 season, the one where the Pirates have a winning record, he has a pretty good year that year, but he gets hurt again, and then the Pirates trade him to the Yankees. Tyon's still pitching, I think, currently for the Cubs. So it's not like he was bad. He had a lot of bad luck.
I think it's another guy that's like towards the solid, like, bullpen third or fourth starter guy. Like him and Zach Duke are kind of the same player, only I would say Tyon more as injuries than,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like another one of those guys. It's like he's a role player. Like if you put him on a good team like that 2000, like he'll be okay. And I think even for the Yankees, he was okay when they used him in his role. But if you want him to be the ace of your staff, you're probably going to be gravely mistaken.
Yeah, and just like Benson, I mean, he was the number two overall pick in the draft. So I think that just adds to the like expectation level. Whereas Duke was not that. Duke was kind of a guy that rose through the minors and surprised people. So maybe that's the difference between those two guys. The last three guys on the list kind of fall into what I'm going to call a what if category. The first two guys are 2015 and 2016 top prospect Tyler Glasnow and 2017 top prospect Austin Meadows. And Steve talked about these two guys in our memorable trades episode
Yeah.
because Neil Huntington incorrectly thinks that the 2018 team is a contender. So he trades Glasnow and Meadows to Tampa Bay for veteran pitcher Chris Archer. And,
Oops.
To be fair, that 2018 team was competitive. It's one of only four Pirates teams since 1992 to have a winning record. But I mean, that trade was a mistake. I mean, what a huge mistake. And man, could you imagine if we had those two guys right now?
They're pretty good with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just tough. Like I didn't I think in my episode I didn't necessarily criticize the trade too harshly because I didn't think it was a terrible move at the time. It just didn't work out. I thought it was like I compared it to the Jerome McGinley thing. Like I think Chris Archer was a good player, but he was at the tail end and it just
Mm.
didn't work out here for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know if he was playing left wing and he should have been a right wing, but yeah,
Yeah, I
it
guess
should have.
the difference is we didn't trade like, Jake Gensel
Yeah,
and
yeah, and it's
another
a shame because both those guys end up being really good for Tampa,
yeah,
and I mean, and Charlie Morton, and there was all those other like former
yeah.
Pirates like there for a couple of years. They were like, hey, remember when the Pirates had talent in their system and were developing talent and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, that was unfortunate. And then last but not least on our list, and also in the what if category, is the 2012 and 2013 top prospect, Garrett Cole. Right away, the Pirates show a ton of faith in Cole. They start him over AJ Burnett for the deciding game 5 of the NLDS against St. Louis in his rookie season. The Bucks lose that game, but Cole goes on to flash some brilliance. He makes an all-star team. He has some really strong stretches. But of course, the Pirates being the Pirates, they salary dump him, and now he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. At the time of this recording, he is the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner.
see, that's what's going to happen with Paul Skenes. That's exactly what's going to happen with Paul Skenes. And why wouldn't you think any different? Unless Nutting sells the team between now and then to
Yeah,
somebody that doesn't run the team like him. So,
yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, maybe like I saw an editorial in the paper that they were saying they might not re-sign the lease in PNC Park with the Pirates, like suggesting that the city doesn't do that. But I don't, I don't know that that's much leverage because you don't have any leverage here because like he'll just move the team to like he could even like do like I've suggested before when the city wants to play hardball. Like you don't have to move the team like to like Nashville or something. You could just move the team to like he's from West Virginia, move it to like Wheeling or Weirton. It's 45 minutes away, and you could still call them the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, so I don't know how that would work with the city, but
Yeah, the Post Gazette, what Steve's referring to, just published a kind of a much talked about editorial where they suggested that the city like ransom, hold the stadium for ransom. First of all, the city's never going to do that, and secondly, like you said, it won't do anything. So
I don't
that's
think
not
it
the
would
solution.
work. I mean, you could maybe threaten it, like maybe this is their way, like the mayor's like back channel way of kind of like threatening him. Like
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Just kind of maybe see if you can scare him a little that
yeah,
we're sick of you just like not doing anything with the team, So if and when Skeens leaves, if it's like a Garrett Cole situation, I think that I don't know. People keep coming back, so I keep thinking, well, that'll be the end of the Pirates fan base. It might be. It might be for a while at least, for 5 years or so.
yeah,
So,
yep.
but he'll just suffer through it like he always does. I don't know. It doesn't seem very fair, but
No, it's not. But that's unfortunately the ownership we have. So it's what we're stuck with.
it's funny the difference between them and the Penguins because like I think that's more of the fair comparison. And it's like the Penguins at least try. You feel like they try.
Yeah,
They sign Chris Letang. You might not agree with it. Oh, they signed him for too long, but they did sign him. They spend money,
right.
and he just he's not going to keep this guy, and that's a joke. That's a freaking joke,
Yeah, it's
and they don't
unfortunate.
do anything about it. It's so frustrating.
It
I
is.
don't want to turn this into like let's complain about Bob Nutting because we've done it so many times,
Yeah,
but
yeah, and it's not going to do anything either. So,
Well, maybe he listens to our podcast.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm
Bob,
sure.
start signing people. Maybe he doesn't have the money. I don't know. I don't want to tell a person how to run their business. I don't know. I don't look at the books. Maybe we could have a John Van Bedscote and look at the books. He runs a successful real estate company in Tennessee. Maybe Van Bedscote will be the one that'll move them to Nashville.
There you go. There you go.
It's all coming full circle.
So just summarizing the list, 21 prospects, Baseball America top prospects in the past 30 years. 5 of them were saying too early to tell. 2 were stars. 3 were solid. I said 8 were busts. Steve disagrees with 3 of those. And then 3 were good somewhere else after the Pirates gave up on them too early. So, I mean, what does that tell us about the future, especially for a guy like Paul Skenes? I think we just said it, right? It's the economics of baseball and the ownership that we have is not going to. Guys, the future top prospects are either going to be mismanaged, like some of the guys on that list. They're going to have bad luck, like we talked about the Tommy John surgeries and stuff like that, or they're going to be good and the Pirates just aren't going to keep them because of ownership. Now, I think the only question in there, Steve, is on the mismanagement side, right? Because that is one thing that even if they keep a guy for a short term, that's why they had those good teams in the mid 2010s, because they actually managed the team well. And yes, it was short lived, but you could at least have some windows.
You could do like a Florida Marlins. The Marlins have won, what, 2 World Series since the Pirates have won one?
Right.
The Florida Marlins, okay? You're not talking like a team that's like well-managed or spends a lot of money. Like, they're as badly managed as the Pirates are, and they've managed to win 2 World Series. So that's really something.
Right.
That really says something about the Pirates.
Yeah, just some quotes concerning the how the Pirates manage players. Here's one from Van Benskoten. He says, quote, "You're expected almost immediately after you're drafted to produce at a big league level. Other organizations don't do that."
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if we can compare this to other organizations. I'm sure they all have their busts, but I wonder, like a team like the Tampa Bay Rays or even the Cardinals, like how do they, like, have they developed their talent better than the Pirates? Like, and who's the best at it? That would be an interesting.
Yeah, that would be an interesting comparison. One more quote from Garrett Cole. This was right after he was traded to Houston. He kind of took this veiled shot at the Pirates. He said, quote, "It's refreshing to come to an environment where the team is willing to continually put resources into the club and continue to move forward and try to provide the best possible product for its fans." So that kind of says it all, I think.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll be talking about the Nashville Pirates in a couple of years because I think our mayor's crazy enough to try and ransom the stadium. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, time will tell, but I think, like you said, enjoy the ride with Skenes because it's going to be a short window and hopefully
maybe it'll turn out like the way the Browns turned out, like where the Pirates will move to Nashville and they'll give us an expansion team with a new owner.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep the Pirates name.
There you go.
I could live with that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I hope it works out like the Cleveland Browns doesn't give me a ton of excitement.
But at least in like that rotate, at least we would get rid of Bob Nutting.
All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little romp through recent Pirates history there. Thanks, everybody, so much for listening to our little show here. Just encourage you to spread the word if you like the show. I really think that word of mouth is still our best way to get new people to listen. Also, check us out on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Those links are in the show notes, and we'll catch you next time.